case you didn't know, the month of May was Foster Care Awareness Month. In an effort to raise awareness, we sat down with reps from Seneca County who are working to find more foster parents in the Finger Lakes. It's difficult, grueling work and a thankless job. A lot of foster parents don't even talk about it because it's frankly ingrained in them. Think about what it would be like to bring a child whom you don't know or connected to biologically into your own home, around your own family. Then think about what it would take to make them part of your family. Foster parents are some of the most dedicated folks in every single community. So why are we here? We're here to make the point that foster care shouldn't just be talked about once a year because it's work that's happening throughout it. And encouraging more people to take a close look at what's involved is super important. We pick up today's conversation with our guests who introduce themselves and the work they do.
Tracy Van Black, I'm the Commissioner of the Seneca County Division of Human Services.
May Major, I'm the Director of Children and Family Services.
And I'm Don Casalia, I'm a foster care caseworker for the county.
Okay, so today we are talking about Foster Care Awareness Month. That's the backdrop for this conversation. Tracy, set this up for us a little bit. Why is this month so important, and why is a month like this so important to increase that participation in the foster care community?
Well, this is National Foster Care Awareness Month, so across the nation, lots of different things are going on. What we really want to highlight in Seneca County is the fact that we are in need of more foster homes, whether they be relative homes, whether they be somebody who's just thinking about fostering, whether you're single, you're married, whatever your situation is. And we currently work with the Glove House organization to recruit and retain all of our foster parents. So we would be able to have people go ahead and work with them in regards to training. So really that's the highlight, is for foster parents, and just get awareness out there for, people knowing that we do have numbers in Seneca County. Currently, I think it's between 40 and 60 is what we average, depending on situations that are going on.
Mm-hmm. And I want to get your guys' perspective just in terms of the awareness, and then also what a month like this, when there are more eyes on the issue itself, how that helps and sort of bolsters what you guys are able to do on the ground.
We currently have 45 children in care right now, and this month definitely it makes you think about what the needs are. And the needs for us right now are more foster homes for teenage children. The population has really gone up for those older kids, and they're harder to place. A lot of people want younger kids in their homes. They're not really so eager to take in teenagers. So we are in dire need of some more foster homes in that area.
And just continuing what May's saying is just having people that take teenagers. I mean, there's teachers, coaches, anybody like that, if you're just interested. I mean, so many of these people work with kids every day. They know how to work with them, and they would be great resources for these kids. But all kids, and we need foster parents for all ages. It's it's just something that's very dire need right now.
What part of the process, I guess, is the hardest part to pitch to prospective foster parents who might be sort of on the fence thinking about it? To me, from the outside, it seems like a pretty grueling process. Do you guys sort of walk those prospective parents through what the process might look like for them if they are thinking about going that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Glove House would start that process with them, with the trainings that they would go through. But then once a child comes into care and is placed with a foster parent, there's a case manager that is with the foster parents to support them the whole way through.
And that's something what I would be doing. I'm working with them at all times. We have a variety of services in Seneca County to help these families, to help the kids and help the bio parents. So it's they have a lot of supports, but it's also frightening for people because they know they're taking kids that have baggage. They also know that at some point they come to love these kids, but they have to go home to their parents at some point. So it's a hard thing for people to work through.
And is that part of the uncertainty that's attached to this? I would assume every person is unique, every individual is unique, every situation is unique. Is it sort of that volatility in terms of what to actually expect out of the A to Z process, part of the intimidation factor that's associated with it for parents?
I think it is, and they go through an extensive training program. It's like 10-week program, and they have support groups after they become foster parents and things like that. They're not just left out there by themselves. We're there to support them all the way. But I think just that fear of, I'm bringing somebody into my house, and how are they going to do the dynamics of my family? How is that going to affect it? So
I was going to say, how much of that is the consideration for parents? Not just sort of bringing a child or what might be a young adult or a teen into a scenario where they don't have any other kids, but having 2 or 3 other kids and bringing them into that scenario. Is that really a big part of the consideration that the family has to ultimately go through?
Absolutely. And I would say that most of the foster parents would have that conversation with their own biological children to see how they feel about it. It's going to completely change the dynamics in that household. And chances are there are going to be a lot of bumps along the way.
And what are some of the challenges that are navigatable, but that tend to pop up when these folks are going through these situations?
The children that are coming into care are coming in for various reasons. It could be mental health issues. It could be physical abuse, sexual abuse. It really depends on what the scenario is. But to think that things are going to go smoothly is pretty unrealistic.
Mm-hmm. And what is the timeline usually for how long a child might be in foster care? Is there any sort of average, or is it just really all over the map?
Well, the government sets up an actual thing. Kids should not be brought up in foster care, and that was happening years ago. So if kids are in care 15 of the latest 22 months, then we actually have to think about terminating the parents' rights and looking out for permanency for them, either through adoption or guardianship or something else. But it does vary. Sometimes kids are only in a few months, and we're able to work with the families. It's not a major thing. Sometimes we can't do that, and the kids do end up being, the rights terminated, and the kids are being adopted.
That's really interesting. 22 months for someone living in that scenario might seem like an eternity, but for someone from the outside, 22 months actually, that's not that long. It's not even 2 years. Why? What were some of the sort of standards, or I guess how did that timeline or that number sort of come to be?
I think it was just the fact that kids were growing up in foster care. They weren't giving any permanency at all. It's that, they were going from foster home to foster home. They were not necessarily, there was no goal for them to either to go home or to be adopted or whatever. And I think the government just said, we have to do something about this. Kids deserve to have permanency in their life.
And Tracy, when you look at sort of what Seneca County is dealing with on this front, compared to other counties, at the same sort of pace, is it a bigger problem, smaller problem, or where does it sort of fall in the grand scheme of things? Obviously, we've heard throughout the Finger Lakes, we've heard a lot of discussion about there being a shortage of foster parents. But that said, what does Seneca County's situation look like compared to some other communities?
I think we're at the same sort of pace as other counties around the region. At times we do have higher numbers of foster children in foster care than counties that are similar in size to us. Some of those factors may be the drug epidemic that's going on right now, neglect. There's a lot of parents who are overwhelmed, who nobody gets any training for becoming a parent, and we have people who are just unable to handle the scenarios that go on in this world today. I mean, it's a different world than it was. A lot of things are happening out there that parents just don't know how to handle, and that leads to neglect or abuseful situations. Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to sort of weighing this challenge, not just in Seneca County, but across the board, how do folks who work this and live this every day, do you measure success, or what do you what's a good day? I guess we'll start there and sort of blossom out. Walk us through what your perspective, what you think that is.
A good day for me would be finding out that a child can go home. has successfully transitioned back to their parents or to another relative, or a child that's been sitting in foster care for years is going to be adopted. And we have a few of those coming up for the first time in quite a while, children that honestly have been in care for years. So to me, that's the best day.
And sort of expanding out beyond that, if we're looking at this as sort of, we have X number of foster parents in the field right now, what's a good number, or what is sort of the goal as you guys look forward a year, 2 years, that sort of thing?
As many as we can get. There's never enough foster parents. We never know what our need is going to be.
Right.
And we may go months without anybody coming in care, and then we might go 1 week where we have 3 different families of kids coming into care. So it's as many families as we can have. It's.
Well, and the reason why I asked is because I want this to be real for people when they're and I want people to understand what the shortage actually looks like. So what are the levels right now, or where would you ideally like to be at this point compared to that real number?
Right. Currently, statistically, it shows that Seneca County has just enough foster homes for the foster children we have in care. However, ideally, that is not true. What's really going on is we have kids who can't be placed in foster homes because of behaviors that are challenging, so they have to go to congregate care facilities. As you know, the one facility we have in the county is closing, Hillside. So we have our caseworkers going to Binghamton, to Utica, to Syracuse, to Rochester to visit kids, and our goal is to step these children down into foster homes, but then we also have to get foster parents who are willing to take these challenging children. Very hard to do. We also have therapeutic foster homes through Glove House that are in different counties, which oftentimes those are the families that will take the more challenging children. So again, we have people going to Baldwinsville in other counties, in Onondaga and down in Broome County, wherever the therapeutic homes are. So really what we need is closer foster homes in Seneca County for people who are willing to take those children who are challenging, and so we can step them down sooner. What I would like to see as the commissioner is for children to really look at that 12-month period, and if they can't go home, that we're looking for an adoptive home, and or we're stepping them down out of a facility if they're in a facility, or to a relative. Those are the things that I think is our goal within the next couple of years to look at.
Does that distance that you mentioned, obviously the Hillside closure and the congregate care with some of the larger facilities not being in Seneca County or really near Seneca County, does that make the actual process more difficult for not only the families to go through, but also for the children to have to navigate?
Absolutely, because they're not seeing their families. We have to help provide transportation, and we do. I mean, I think our staff does a great job in getting families connected and reconnected. But, that's a whole day. You have a whole day where you're taking a parent up there. They're having a 3-hour at the most visit. You're bringing them home. You're doing some training and some work with the parents, with the child. You're supervising the visit. So it's a whole day for a caseworker. And that takes a lot of time, especially if visitations are court ordered for twice a week or more, depending on what the court order says. And that's for parents without transportation. But then parents who do have transportation, they have to set it up with a facility. The caseworker may or may not have to be there for supervision needs. So it's just a lot more work, and it's harder for the parents and the children to reconnect so the child can step down sooner.
And since we sort of broached the topic a little bit, how much more taxing is that on the county and the various organizations, Glove House, et cetera, who are working on these and with these families working through the process? How much more difficult does that become?
It becomes very difficult. It's hard for a caseworker in general to manage their time in the field away from the office and their time in the office. Especially in foster care, the paperwork is kind of crazy. Don can speak to that.
Unbelievable.
But to give you a little bit of perspective on the foster homes, Glove House has 16 homes that are available to us. only 7 of those are in Seneca County. So like Tracy said, our workers are going all over the place. And if we kind of, dwindle that down a little bit, 7 for our county isn't a lot. So I would be with Tracy that the goal would be to grow that number from 7 to however many we can get.
I mean, 7 averages out to less than 1 per town in Seneca County.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So you mentioned the paperwork, and I do want to touch on that, because that's the part of this that nobody sees, or sort of the community doesn't see. Walk us through. She said it, just how intense that part of it is, and how taxing that can be on the entities that are ultimately trying to make a positive difference here.
A lot of the paperwork has to do with state funding, state or federal funding, where we get our funds for the kids. So that's all got it, and it's very detailed what we have to do, and it has to be very accurate. Also, whenever I meet with anybody or talk with anybody, I have to do a progress note on that, and those notes have to be put in the state computer system within 2 weeks of it happening. And let me tell you, all day long, if I'm in the office, I'm on the phone a good part of that day, talking to people. I'm taking messages from people. I'm trying to arrange visits for people. And then when I'm out into the field, actually talking with the parents, working with them, I have to document everything we've talked about, every service that I have involved for them. So it's very detailed and very grueling. It's we spend a lot of time on paperwork, and but we also have to have that time to go out and actually work with the families, which is what we need to do to get these kids home. And
that was gonna be my follow-up is at what point does that sort of overload of paperwork and sort of process get in the way of the good or the potential good that could be done if you guys had maybe 5 more minutes per case of free time to be able to do X, Y, and Z instead of filling out that extra form or 2 extra forms?
And I think we do have a big turnover in workers, and I think it does get to a lot of people quite easily. Our supervisors, May and Tracy, everybody's really supporting us. We have family aides that go out and work with the families too, which relieves us a lot too. We have glove house workers going out in the field too, so that helps too. But it's still a lot of paperwork, and if we have to work overtime. I mean, they're great. I mean, as far as supervision goes, to make sure that we're accomplishing what we have to do, and they're supporting us all the way. I'm always with my supervisor saying, "Look at how am I going to do this?" And she's there to help me and support me. So but it does get overwhelming.
And Tracy, I want to sort of toss that same question over to you, but from your perspective, you see this in multiple different ways, right? So, walk me through what sort of an ideal situation might be where this gets better in terms of allowing the social workers and the people on the ground to be freed up to do more of that work.
Well, because I was a caseworker at one time and I did work in foster care, one of the things that we are going to be trying is we're going to be having all of our caseworkers in all of our units have laptop systems out in the field. And all of their forms will be on there where parents will be able to sign. They'll be able to do everything right in the field. Ideally, that's great, but when you have a kid that's going in crisis, you're not going to be typing notes. Right. You're not going to be signing things. But at least hopefully that will help with some of the paperwork needs. Because really, these are cases that are court-ordered. One thing that's also going to help is, as commissioner, I have to sign everything for foster children because I'm their guardian. I'm legally their guardian. So what's going to happen with this new system that we're getting is I will get an email saying you have something to sign because the caseworker will be in the field and they'll have the paperwork ready. I'll get an email, and because everything's mobile, I can get it anywhere that I'm at. And I'll be able to go into the system myself no matter where I'm at and sign the paperwork. So I'm hoping that will free up some time too for our caseworkers, because ultimately it is about doing the casework. It's not about doing the paperwork. However, we have federal and state mandates, and we don't want to lose any funding. We don't want any of that stuff to go on. So, that's something that I have to push as commissioner, and May has to push as director of services, making sure we're meeting the mandates that the state and federal government sets for us. But we also have to look at what's most important, the children are the most important, and families are the most important of what we're doing. So the paperwork has to get done, but we have to kind of figure out systems, and that's what I'm hoping this new computer system that we're developing and it's going to start working with will help in regards to freeing up some time and hopefully work on our burnout, because we do have a high turnover rate in our services department.
And okay, so you brought it up, so let's go there. How much of a challenge is it then, keeping your staff, keeping them not just present and employed, but happy and healthy while they're doing their job, so that they're not becoming burned out, tired, looking for those opportunities elsewhere that might be a little less stressful or burdensome?
It is very hard, especially until recently. Seneca County was one of the lowest paid counties for our caseworkers, but we've had some improvement in that area. I think it's just the work. Human services is hard work. Foster care, child protective, preventive services is even harder. You're working with families every day. Very rarely do you not have a crisis. And that's trying on you personally. Right. You take this stuff home with you. Whether people say they can or not, they do take it home with them. So I think we have a lot of things in place for staff. I know we have great EAP services that staff do use. We can always refer them over and have somebody from mental health come over and help people if they're dealing with a situation that is stressful, because it happens. Things unexpectedly happen. So we do have resources out there for staff, but it's grueling work. So what we try to do, I know we just hired 2 more caseworkers, so we do increase in our caseworkers. Right. And we have, over the last several years, we've gone from maybe 6 caseworkers overall, and what are we up to now? Probably almost 30, something like that. So we've definitely made improvements in that area, so people aren't so burnt out and stressed out there in the field.
And May, just sort of following up on that, how do you avoid that, on a personal level, how do you avoid the emotional burnout that's happening? Short of, obviously if staffing issues are resolved and you're at sort of max staff, it's still very difficult work. You're still dealing with things that most people aren't dealing with on a daily basis or aren't seeing on a daily basis. And that's all of the things that you're seeing. So how do you sort of keep that in perspective and be able to still function normally without sort of thinking about it around the clock all the time?
I think, first of all, that in order to be a caseworker or to work in this field, you have to be in it for the right reasons. You have to be in it to help people, to be down in the trenches with them, because there are some situations where they're just awful. We deal with fatalities. And I think sometimes workers come into the job thinking, I'm going to help people, they're going to be so grateful. That doesn't happen a lot. We do help them, but there's not much of a kickback. So I think the people that stay are able to walk that fine line and leave work and have it not consume them. But there are people that pretty quickly realize they can't do that. They're not capable of doing that. We have a good group. We have about 35 staff in my department, and Don would help somebody out in CPS if they needed it. Somebody in preventive would help foster care. It's really a good group that we just pitch in wherever needed, and I think that's what a lot of people miss when they leave Seneca. We've had a lot of workers go to different counties, and that is what they report back that they miss, is the teamwork and the togetherness that we are as a department.
And we all support each other. I can go to May or even Tracy at any time and just talk about what issues are going on, and they're there. Everybody has an open door. All the supervision. It's never been an issue. They're there to support us, and sometimes they give us a fresh perspective on things too. Because sometimes you get really involved in a case and you sort of lose track of different perspectives. So it's and like you said, we work as a team. If I need help from somebody else, they're more than willing to help me. No one's ever said no to me when they've had the time.
Is that just some of the reality of the type of work that you guys are doing, given the overlap that I would imagine exists within all these different facets of sort of the human services side of things?
Yeah, because most of our cases in foster care come from CPS. So there's never a time when CPS just washes their hand of it. If Don needs something from that caseworker or another caseworker, they're more than happy to chip in and do whatever's needed. Yeah.
So my last question for you guys, and I want to go sort of around the room on this one. What is the call to action during this month of awareness? What is the call to action that sort of anybody, whether they're really super engaged in this topic or not, can sort of do to maybe not get directly involved, but just sort of to continue help raising awareness so that those who are interested can become involved?
I think from my perspective, it's recruitment of foster parents. I think, you can be a foster parent and have a kid just for respite services. Sometimes that's what we need, is just other foster parents out there providing respite to their counter foster parents, because kids are challenging. Even if you have kids who don't have the trauma that the kids in foster care do, kids are challenging irregardless. And having extra hands out there and for people to turn to, I think, is most important. It is what we need for foster care in general.
May?
I think as a community, as Seneca County, we need to step up. We need more people to be willing to help these kids and help these families in any way that they can. And like Tracy said, that could be just one weekend a month. Someone, having a child at their home for a weekend a month, that would be huge. Or like I said, the teenagers, we really need some help in that area. So as a community, I would hope that people would step up and want to help.
And I just have to continue that same thing, having people step up to help, especially with the teenagers. Like I said, there's people that work in the community with teenagers all the time, and they probably would be great foster parents. They're teachers, they're coaches, they're out there working different programs with kids if they can just consider it. And like I said, sometimes maybe it's just for a respite. We're always looking for families, and also there's a stigma with kids in foster care, but I think people just got to realize they're just kids, and they deserve to be loved and brought up in a caring and nurture community, and that's what we want for all of our kids in our area.
All right, well, appreciate the time, guys. Keep up the good work, and of course, all the information that they've been talking about we'll be throwing down in the show notes of today's podcast, and of course, we'll be having you guys back to talk about this topic again, because it's really it's a tough topic, but it's one that we have to keep the ball rolling and keep talking about. Thanks, guys.
Thank
you.